It began on a night heavy with rain, the kind of rain that didn't just fell, it pressed down, swallowing the streets of Hollow Creek in a curtain of sound. 15 years had passed since they had last stood together, yet fate had drawn them back, bound by a promise they once made when childhood still felt infinite. For friends, one pact, and a box buried in the dirt that never should have been disturbed, they gathered under the ancient oak at the edge of town, the place where their childhood secrets had been sealed in the soil. The tree loomed like a sentinel, its branches twisting into the storm, its roots clawing deep into the ground as if guarding what lay beneath. Claire was the first to arrive. Her hair was darker now, streaked with grey, though she was only in her 30s. The rain plastered her coat to her body, her cigarette burned low and fast, and her eyes darted to every shadow as though something might step out of them. She looked older than the others remembered, as though life had peeled away her softness and left only edges. Evan came next, broad-shouldered, his posture bent like a man who had carried too much weight for too long. His silence filled the air even before he reached them. He nodded once, a greeting too brittle to mean much, and stood slightly apart, watching. Julia followed, her umbrella trembling in her grip, her lips pressed thin. Once she had been bright, always laughing, but tonight her expression was hard, her jaw clenched against something she would not say. Daniel was last, stepping into the circle with hesitant strides, his eyes flicking between them as though he feared this was all some elaborate trap. He was thinner than before, the boyish dreamer hollowed out, leaving a man with an unreadable gaze. But the fourth member of their childhood circle, Max, was not there. Max had been gone for 15 years, vanished the very day they buried their time capsule, and yet it was Max's map that had summoned them. A letter had arrived at each of their homes 2 weeks earlier, postmarked with no return address, the paper yellowed with age. Inside was a crude sketch: the oak tree, the clearing, the marked spot where the capsule had been buried. Scrawled across the bottom, in the handwriting none of them had seen since childhood, were the words: "It's time." The rain churned the soil to mud as they dug. None of them spoke. The sound of shovels biting earth filled the night, a dull rhythm beneath the storm. Finally, Daniel's shovels struck something solid, a metallic clang that jarred his bones. They froze together. They crouched and cleared away the mud with their bare hands until the edges of a rusted tin box revealed themselves. Its lock was eaten away by time, its surface pitted and flaking. Daniel pried it open. The smell hit them first, stale, musty, but with a sharp undertone that made their stomachs twist. Inside lay relics of their youth: a broken action figure, a friendship bracelet knotted with fading threads, a cassette tape labeled "Our Songs" in childish scrawl, and at the bottom, beneath them all, an envelope. It was yellowed but intact, its ink smudged only slightly by years of damp. On the front, in neat, deliberate handwriting, was a single word: friends. Claire snatched it before anyone else could. Her hand shook as she tore the seal. The paper inside was fragile, but the words were still legible. She read aloud: "To my friends Claire, Evan, Julia, Daniel, if you are reading this, it means 15 years have passed. I wrote this knowing what your futures hold. Don't laugh, it will sound strange, but I've seen it. I know what comes." Her voice trembled. The others leaned closer despite themselves. "Claire, you will marry young, but he will break you. You will carry scars you can't hide. Julia, you will lose something precious, and it will change you forever. Evan, you will fight the war within yourself and lose. Daniel, you will dream too much, and it will destroy you." The words fell into the rain like stones. Each of them stiffened, because every single line was true. Claire had been divorced 3 years earlier, her arms still marked faintly where glass had cut them in her husband's drunken rage. Julia had lost her baby in childbirth, a wound that never healed. Evan had returned from military service broken, his nights haunted, his silence deeper than words. And Daniel had lost himself in failed ventures and impossible schemes, a man betrayed by his own illusions. The letter had named them all, perfectly. Claire swallowed hard and forced herself to the final lines. "And for me," the handwriting shifted here, jagged, as though written with a trembling hand, "I will be dug up with this letter in 15 years. The storm seemed to pause. No one moved. Evan's gaze fell to the box, his lips parted, but no words came. Slowly, he pushed his shovel deeper into the soil beneath the capsule, scraping. The metal hit something soft. The others flinched. Claire dropped the letter into the mud. Julia covered her mouth with her hand. Evan dug again. His shovel tore into the softened earth until something pale surfaced beneath the mud, a fragment of cloth, a sliver of bone. The 4 of them stared in silence. Max had never left. He had been buried with the capsule. The storm raged above, but none of them felt it anymore. The rain slicked their hair, soaked their clothes, but their eyes were locked on the thing beneath the earth, Max's body. Or what was left of it, the pale curve of bone, the ragged edge of fabric clinging to it, the undeniable human shape just beneath the surface. The soil had preserved fragments enough to know, enough to crush the air from their lungs. Julia stumbled back, her umbrella collapsing in the mud. She retched, her stomach twisting violently as her knees buckled. Claire, shaking, lit another cigarette with trembling fingers. Though the rain immediately drowned it out, her hands wouldn't stop moving. Clawing at her sleeves as if the memory of scars burned fresh, Daniel whispered, voice broken, 15 years. He's been here. 15 years. Evan said nothing. His jaw was clenched so tightly that his teeth might break. He crouched, his broad hands trembling, and reached toward the exposed cloth blue fabric, rotted and eaten with mold. He froze before touching it, then pulled back as though it would sear his skin. Claire's voice cut through the storm. This is impossible. You all saw him leave. That night, he walked away. He said goodbye. No. Julia's voice was high, quivering, almost a laugh. He didn't. Don't you remember? He sighed and said he'd see us soon. That was the last thing. He never. Shut up. Evan snapped, his voice harsh, cracking through the air like a gunshot. Just shut up. But Julia couldn't stop. Her mind unraveled in her eyes, her words tumbling too fast. He knew. He wrote it. He knew we'd find him here. He knew this would happen. How? How did he know? Daniel picked the letter from the mud, smearing the ink as he stared at it. The words blurred, but he already knew them by heart. Every line burned into his skull. He read the last sentence again, whispering to himself, I will be dug up with this letter in 15 years. The rain pressed heavier, as if the sky itself tried to drown them. Claire grabbed Daniel's arm, shaking him hard. This isn't real. It's a prank. Someone did this. Put Bones here. Wrote this. Sent us those letters. Evan looked at her, his eyes flat. Bones don't lie. Claire, the silence that followed was unbearable. The four of them, bound by something they couldn't explain, stood in the clearing with the ghost of their childhood friend unearthed at their feet. Finally, Evan spoke again. We need to finish. Claire spun on him. Finish what? What else could you possibly? The capsule, he said, pointing to the tin box. We only looked at the top. We didn't check it all. Reluctantly, they gathered again. Daniel pulled the box closer, his hands mud-streaked, fingers numb. He lifted the cassette tape, turning it over in his hand. The label had faded, but the childish scrawl was still visible. Our songs. Claire snorted bitterly. We don't even have a player for that. Julia ignored her. She reached inside, brushing aside the bracelet, the toy. Her hand closed on something else, another envelope, smaller, hidden beneath the rest. Her heart slammed against her ribs. She pulled it free. This one wasn't yellowed. Its paper was crisper, less aged, as if it hadn't been there for 15 years, as if someone had placed it inside far more recently. She opened it with shaking fingers. Inside was a single slip of paper, the ink fresh, the handwriting the same, one of, You put me here. The four of them froze. The words stared back at them like a curse. Claire's face drained of color. Daniel dropped the tin box back into the mud. Julia's hand shook so violently she almost tore the note apart. What? What does that mean? Claire whispered. Evan's gaze swept over them all. His breathing was steady, but his eyes burned. It means one of us killed him. The clearing seemed to shrink around them, the oak tree bending closer, the storm closing its fist. Their faces, pale and wet in the lightning's glow, looked suddenly unfamiliar to each other. Julia shook her head violently. No, 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 no. We were kids. We were just kids. We didn't. But her words faltered, because the memory clawed its way back. That night, Max's laugh echoing in the dark, the feel of the shovel in their small hands, the way the air had felt too heavy when they buried that box. Had something else been buried with it? Daniel's voice broke the silence. We need to call someone. The police. The Evans' hand shot out, gripping his arm like iron. No police. Daniel stared at him. Are you insane? There's a body here. Evans' jaw worked, but his voice was quiet. You think they'll believe us? For kids bury a time capsule. 15 years later it's dug up, and there's a corpse in it. You think they won't look at us first? The truth sank like stones in their stomachs. Claire turned, stumbling backward. I'm not staying here. I'm not. But as she moved, something caught her eye in the distance. Beyond the clearing, a figure stood at the tree line, a silhouette, motionless, watching. She froze, her breath hitched. Someone's there. The others snapped their heads up, following her gaze. But when the lightning flashed again, the figure was gone. The clearing seemed emptier than before, the storm louder, the shadows thicker. Julia whimpered, clutching herself. Daniel's hand shook so badly he dropped the letter again. Evan stood perfectly still, his eyes scanning the dark as though daring it to reveal itself. They didn't speak for a long time. The rain fell, the wind twisted the branches. The body of their childhood friend lay half exposed at their feet. Finally, Claire whispered, we shouldn't have come back, and none of them disagreed. The clearing no longer felt like the same place. It was smaller now, suffocating, as if the oak tree's roots had spread unseen to wrap them all in a grip that could not be broken. No one moved for what felt like hours. Though it could have been only minutes, the storm had eased, but the silence left in its wake was worse. It pressed against their skulls, filled their ears with the sound of their own uneven breathing. Daniel finally broke it. His voice was raw, low, his words fragile. What if he wrote that, after he was already dead? The others turned to him, their faces twisted with disbelief. That doesn't make any sense, Claire snapped, though her tone lacked its usual strength. Dead people don't write letters. Julia's lip trembled. But what if? What if he wasn't dead when we buried the box? What if? Her words cracked, splitting into a sob. She covered her mouth, choking it down. Evan crouched again at the edge of the pit. His eyes scanned the earth, the pale fragments of bone, the blue fabric. His hand hovered above the ground, inches from touching it. Before curling into a fist and pulling back, he was alive, Evan said. His voice was steady, terrifying in its certainty. He was alive when we buried him. The word struck like lightning. Claire shook her head, shaking so violently her cigarette tumbled from her lips into the mud. No, no, would have known. We would Harvey would have screamed, or fought, unless one of us made sure he couldn't. The accusation hung in the air, heavy, irrefutable. Julia's eyes darted to each of them in turn, wide and glistening. Don't do that. Don't look at me like I. Evan rose to his feet slowly, towering over them. His face was unreadable, but his eyes were sharp, dissecting. Someone here knows the truth. Someone remembers more than they're saying. Daniel's voice cracked. We were kids. We didn't know what we were doing. If something happened, it was an accident. It had to be, but even he didn't sound convinced. The wind rustled through the oak's branches, for a moment. It sounded like laughter. Claire spun, her nerves snapping like glass. Enough. I'm leaving. I don't care what's buried here. I don't care about the letters or any of it. I'm done. She turned and began trudging toward the tree line, her boots sinking into the mud. Claire, Julia called after her, her voice shrill with panic, but Claire didn't stop. The others stood frozen, watching her figure retreat into the dark. Then a scream tore the air open, high, sharp, sudden. Claire's voice, cut short. Strangled mid-breath, they ran. Instinct pulled them forward, crashing through the underbrush toward the sound. Branches clawed at their faces, the mud sucked at their feet, but the scream echoed in their heads, guiding them. They found her on the ground just beyond the trees. She was alive but barely. Her face was white, her lips trembling as though frozen. Her eyes were wide, staring at something none of them could see. Her body shook, her nails clawing at the earth. Daniel dropped beside her, shaking her shoulders. Claire, what happened? What? Her lips moved, barely a whisper. He was here. The words chilled them to the marrow. Julia fell back, her own breath breaking. No, 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 no. Evan's head snapped toward the shadows, scanning every inch of darkness. His hands curled into fists, but there was nothing but the endless black of the forest, swallowing everything. Claire's body went limp in Daniel's arms, not dead, but unconscious. Her breath shallow. He held her close, his chest heaving, his eyes wide with terror. We can't stay here, he said. His voice was high, cracked, almost pleading. We have to go. Now. Evan shook his head. If we leave, we'll never know. We'll spend the rest of our lives wondering. Wondering is better than dying. Julia screamed. The forest absorbed her voice. The echo swallowed instantly. The three of them stared at each other, the silence louder than any argument. Each face was a mirror of the other's fear, anger, suspicion. Claire stirred weakly, a groan breaking the stillness. She blinked, eyes glassy, and whispered again. He said my name. The words scraped her throat raw. Tears spilled down her cheeks. He said it like he was right behind me. Daniel's hands trembled so hard he nearly dropped her. He looked at Evan, then Julia, desperation in his eyes. We can't do this. We can't fight whatever this is. Evan's face hardened. There is no whatever. There's the truth, and until we know it, none of us are safe. Julia clutched her head in both hands, rocking slightly, muttering to herself, he's dead, he's dead, he's dead, he's dead. The sky above rumbled again, a distant growl of thunder. Daniel swallowed, his throat dry. His gaze drifted back toward the clearing, where the capsule still lay open, where the bones still peeked from the soil. His voice was barely audible. We were supposed to open it together. That was the deal. That was the pact. And now, he trailed off. None of them wanted to finish the thought. The forest seemed to press closer. The shadows between the trees moved like figures shifting just out of sight. For the first time, Evan looked shaken. His eyes flickered back toward the clearing, then to Claire, pale and shivering in Daniel's arms. We go back, he said. His voice left no room for argument. We finish this. We open everything, every letter, every clue. We don't leave until we know. Julia stared at him as though he had lost his mind. You'll kill us all. But she followed anyway. They returned to the oak. The clearing was exactly as they had left it, box open, letter soaked in the mud, the bones half exposed, but the air felt heavier now, charged. Watching, Daniel laid Claire gently against the roots, brushing the wet hair from her face. Her breathing was shallow but steady. Evan crouched by the box again. His fingers dug through the relics, searching, pulling each one out with deliberate care. The toy, the bracelet, the cassette, the first letter, the second, and then, at the very bottom, a third envelope. This one was sealed in plastic, perfectly preserved. The paper inside looked untouched by time. Evan held it up, his eyes narrowing. Another one. Daniel's stomach turned. Don't, but Evan was already tearing the plastic open. He unfolded the paper, and for the first time, his hand trembled because the handwriting was different, not Max's. And the words were few, but clear. It wasn't me. The three of them stared, their hearts pounding in unison. Julia whispered, then who? Her voice caught in her throat because behind them, from the trees, A voice answered, low, familiar, you already know. They spun as one, hearts leaping, eyes wide, but the clearing was empty, the voice was gone, only the rain fell. The three of them stood frozen in the clearing, their breath shallow, the silence pressing down like a weight. The oak tree creaked in. The wind, its branches swaying, and for a moment the sound was almost human, almost a groan. Daniel clutched the letter in his hands. The words "it wasn't me" bleeding into his mind until he could barely think. Julia's eyes darted from shadow to shadow, every movement in the darkness a threat. Evan, rigid as stone, scanned the tree line with a soldier's gaze, his fists clenched, and then Claire stirred again. Her voice was hoarse, barely more than a whisper. But they all heard it. You shouldn't have opened it. The words fell like a curse. Her eyes opened wide, her pupils blown black, and her body convulsed violently against the roots of the tree. Mud splashed as she writhed, her voice breaking into a scream that didn't sound like her own. Daniel and Julia dropped to her side, trying to hold her down, but Evan didn't move. His face had gone pale, his jaw slack, his gaze wasn't on Claire at all, it was on the pit, on the bones. Because something was moving, the soil shifted, slowly. Deliberately, the pale fragment of cloth pulled deeper into the earth as though something beneath had taken hold of it, and then, from the pit, came the sound they would never forget, a breath dragging in, alive. Eyes shone like fireflies in the night. Rotten flesh creaked. It was Max.